Welcome to the Beyond Membership podcast, where we are uncovering what drives associations forward and how the suite of Momentive software products accelerates that momentum. Well, hey, Rob.
Hey, Jake. Welcome back.
Yep, absolutely. I imagine you've been doing some traveling recently. Anything interesting to report back?
Well, a little bit. Not quite as interesting as your trip to India a week or so ago, but I was up in D.C. last week. Association Trends, which is an important organization in our industry, had an awards ceremony for excellent professionals who are CEOs of associations and other partner awards, and we were very pleased that a number of our clients won awards. So we actually got a table for 10 and invited some guests and really had a real nice time at that event. So I was there. And then this week I'm heading to Chicago, where we're going to have a happy hour for a bunch of clients. And then we're going to have an executive brief for a number of consultants and other interested parties. So I'm definitely traveling around a bit, which is keeping life interesting.
Well, that sounds pretty fun. And as usual, you and I are in very good company today. We're joined by Laura Downs, who is the CEO of AANA, the Arthroscopy Association of North America. And it's really great to have you, Laura. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your association? And obviously, we love to hear something interesting.
Well, thanks, Jake and Rob, for having me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. It should be fun. So let me start by saying I represent, for the last 9.5 years, I represent the Arthroscopy Association of North America, and we are about 6,000 orthopedic surgeons that have a passion for arthroscopy. We primarily provide education and training to surgeons. It's not a specialty, it's a technique. So we teach surgeons how to do surgery with a scope. So we have a lab in Chicago. We do cadaveric training as well as some simulation training and a little bit of robotics. So it's actually pretty interesting. A lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of great people. Fun fact, I don't know if it's a fun fact, but a fact about me is I am an Orange Theory devotee. I have attended classes in 3 different countries. 31 states and 59 different cities. I travel a lot for work, so when I'm traveling, I try to stay healthy, and I go to Orange Theory. So that's my fun fact for today.
So you were mentioning, Laura, a little bit in the intro about your robotics labs that you have at your organization. Tell us a little more about that. And I know we talked a little bit about that the other day, but I'm really interested in that. Tell us what happens.
Yeah, so the Orthopedic Learning Center in Rosemont, we are one of the partners in this facility that was built, I think, around 14 years ago, because a lot of surgeons like to do arthroscopy, but had not received the training that they needed, either in their residencies or fellowships. So that was kind of the premise of building this lab, this state-of-the-art lab that is supported by some very large industry partners. And so over time, different technology has become available. For example, simulation. So we have a group of simulators. We have some partners that will bring in robotics for us, for not us, but for our surgeons to use. And the surgeons come from all over the world because there's many places that you're not allowed to train on cadaveric tissue. So they come because the haptics are so much better when the tissue is real. So they come from all over the world to learn. But yeah, recently we've had robotics in our facility, and it's kind of like association management technology. It's just the next greatest thing to learn from, and in years to come will probably replace some of the surgery that's done by surgeons. But it's really interesting. It's very, very interesting, but challenging because most surgeons don't do any given procedure the exact same way. There's a certain number of steps, but everybody, like everything, they tailor it to their own preferences. They may have had success with something, so they do it they tweak it just a little bit for themselves. So that's where it becomes a little bit challenging with robotics, because it has a set algorithm to do certain things, but it's not necessarily customizable at this time to, Surgeon Smith's intricate little details or tweaks that he's made to his procedure. But I'm sure it'll get there in probably fairly short order. But yeah, it's super interesting. Really cool. probably, I would have guessed, will eliminate a lot of the mistakes as well moving forward. But, surgeons never make mistakes. So,
Yeah.
never.
You said something that caught my attention. The haptics is so much better when the tissue is real. Can you explain that a little
Yeah,
bit more?
so, well, and I should clarify, obviously, cadaveric tissue is not really, I mean, it's real, but it's not live. So arthroscopy is all about hand and eye coordination. And when you're inserting a scope, there's a certain feel that you get in human tissue, and it's very difficult. In fact, there might be people say that it's impossible to replicate. It's the pressure, it's the feel when you insert the scope, and so those haptics, they haven't been able to replicate them on things perfectly with things other than human tissue. So it's just about understanding the pressure, the direction, the give of the tissue that may not necessarily be in a model, certainly not in simulation, because that, again, you're using what you might use if you were playing a video game. It's that kind of thing. So it just doesn't replicate surgery exactly.
Yeah, I can imagine that being quite a difficult thing to get just right. One of the things that always fascinates me about talking to association people is how they have this amazing connection and knowledge about their domain. Obviously, you're CEO of an association, but you have this vast knowledge about surgery with robotics, which is such this niche kind of, well, I suppose hopefully not so niche in the future, right? But
Right.
niche area, and it's always so fascinating to hear some of the things that
Well, we're really lucky because the doctors love to share. And so we learn a lot just by listening or seeing them do what they do. But they're very proud of what they do, and they're very, in our particular space, they're very innovative and entrepreneurial. It's rare that you might meet a surgeon who doesn't have a patent for a certain screw or plate or instrument for their craft. So they're very, very happy to share what they know and how they do what they do and why their way is better than somebody else's way. So yeah, we're lucky that way. And I'm sure that's true of a lot of associations. You learn from being on the job. I don't think typically an association doesn't hire most of their senior staff because of their background necessarily in that profession. It's more about our business background. So you get the opportunity to learn their craft while you're on the jobs.
right. And these are surgeons who are on the cutting edge, obviously, of technology. They're
Yeah.
working with robotics and definitely paving the way for the future of probably how surgery will be done.
Well, and it's funny because they are so entrepreneurial, and I probably really shouldn't say this on a podcast, but some of the more simple things in life are rather difficult for them. Like sending emails or attaching files or, setting up PowerPoint. Those things that we sort of take for granted are oftentimes not so simple for them.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. And people. Part of it is that they're so focused on this important duty that they have that they
Sure.
maybe didn't take the time to learn those other things, or they had people that could do them for them. And I am curious, as these new technologies have come along, such as the robotics and others. Are you finding that's changing your membership or your sponsorships or exhibitors who might attend? Is it changing the composition of your organization as the technology is changing?
It hasn't yet. I think it will. I think that some of the technology is a little new, and some of the delay in probably adoption is also that the average surgeon that we work with is, you're in your 30s by the time you actually get into practice. So by the time we're working with them, they're in their mid 50s. So they're not necessarily early adapters when it comes to things like this because they're used to doing their surgeries the way they do them. So I wouldn't say to date it hasn't changed a lot in terms of our membership composition, although it does present challenges internally in terms of how we deliver education and make sure that the younger doctors are getting exposure to all the different technologies that are out there. Luckily, industry has a lot of money that they can invest. So, J&J MedTech, Arthrex, those types of companies, they've got the robotics readily available for people to use and train on and provide feedback. But our day-to-day has not changed a lot.
One thing that we chatted about briefly when we previously chatted was that this sort of arthroscopy is quite common for athletes and doctors of athletic
Sure.
teams. So is that a big portion of your membership base, or is that sort of a
Well,
quarter?
I would say that a good percentage of our doctors take care of athletes, whether they're collegiate athletes, professional athletes, or even high school and middle school athletes. So they definitely take care of those people. So probably maybe 30-40% of them do that, but it's just from a sports perspective, typically if you can do a procedure arthroscopically, the outcome is going to be better, and the return to play is going to be faster. Now, that's not always true, but that's typically, and so that's why they gravitate towards that, because they'd rather do that than an open procedure, just because it takes longer to get back to doing whatever you're doing.
So one of the things that you had mentioned, Laura, when we talked before was as it relates to your staff. You talked about your organization is changing, your membership is changing a little bit, it might more over time. What type of things do you do to deal with kind of introducing change and driving that along to make it successful?
Well, I think one of the things I try really hard to do is make sure that at the beginning of a process, whether it's for an LMS or an AMS or registration, whatever it might be, whatever that technology is, that you bring all the stakeholders together to talk about what works and doesn't work, and try to create buy-in for whatever change you're, in my mind, that I think we need to address or challenge. But you bring the people together and make them feel like they're part of the process, as opposed to, introducing a new technology, and saying this is what we're doing. So I found that helps. But let's just face it, human nature is people are resistant to change. That's just how it is. I always say to people, I love change as long as I'm the one imposing it. I love change. There are often times when, I would prefer not to. But again, as long as I'm imposing it, I'm all about change. So it's just, I feel like I've seen the most success when people feel like they have a voice and they're involved, and they can be part of the process. And really, in an association, we all touch a lot of different things. And so it's rare that you could, in isolation with one or two people, make a really good decision about anything, really. Because we touch so many different things and have so many different perspectives. So I think I think engaging people and making them feel included it's been very helpful to us.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think like people are generally very much opposed to change, especially change that's kind of being imposed upon them.
Right.
And that's something that we see a lot, right, in the association industry in particular, because we go through these huge projects to get through change. And it's good to bring everybody to the table. Absolutely, I agree with that. Like you need people to feel bought in and feel like their energy is going towards getting that change done. But then there's also the catch-22 of that, where it's like, now you're designing by committee, and that always slows things down. Do you ever run into that or have trouble with that?
We have had trouble with that. I think the other thing I mentioned the last time we talked is everyone's excited. People don't realize how complicated these processes are. Selecting a new vendor is the easy part, really. The demos and everything's shiny and great and it does this and that. But the hard part is the implementation, and they don't realize how much focus and time and energy it takes. And I think where we see signs of challenge or things haven't necessarily played out in the way we wanted is because people get tired, fatigued, and they sort of check out midstream. And then they want to blame the vendor, or they get frustrated with the vendor partner because they're asking questions or they're asking them to test things. And it's like, well, that's how we're going to get to the end. Like, we're not going to finish this unless we do that. But we've had a lot of challenges. People just check out and they just can't stay focused or energized for that long. It takes a long time. And there's a lot of questions, a lot of things you have to do to make it go smoothly.
Right.
This is one of the reasons, though, we try and always look for ways to speed up the implementation process. We constantly are trying to take another look at how we're doing it and figure out if there's a way to make it happen faster, because just as you said, people get tired. Also, if the project goes long enough, you might have some people who leave through the process. They get a new job, somebody gets ill, somebody has the joy of having a new child. A lot of reasons why people have to step out. And if the project goes on too long, you run into too much of that.
Right. We had without naming the company, we decided that we would like to get some technology related to data analytics. And like, I don't personally get involved in these implementations. I sign off on, yeah, that's a great idea, let's do it. Well, a year down the road, like, okay, where are we, guys? Well, like, we were still at step one, and part of it was there were a lot of changes on the vendor side. A lot of it was we didn't think we needed to do it the process the way they had outlined it, which again, they're the experts. We should follow their process. Well, so that's 1 year. A year later, after that, we've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we still don't have a product. And in fact, we never got a product because it just
died on the vine.
It died on the vine. There were too many changes on this particular company's end, and it was going to be another probably a year and another ridiculous investment. We finally just cut our losses and said, okay, well, this lesson learned. We need to do a better job of understanding what's going to be involved from our end and pick the right partner. And in hindsight, they probably weren't the right partner for us anyway. But yeah, it's all about that time and energy and commitment from people. And it's great to hear that you're focused on streamlining that process, because I'm sure it's not good for you either, because you want to finish projects. I mean, that's how you make your money. You're like, we need to implement projects and move on. And you obviously know how to do it because that's what you do. But yeah, so it's good to hear that you have a focus on that, because I think it is probably, I don't think we're unique in having challenges in that area.
No, definitely not.
When you're thinking back on that scenario, like if you were going to back up 2 years and give yourself some advice that would have, helped that process, what would you have said that maybe our listeners could find some value in terms to help them so they don't end up in that scenario?
I think that probably, I probably would have looked closer at the team that was taking the lead to implement this process. And I probably would have personally been a little bit more involved during the selection process, so that I could have been sort of the bad guy to lay out the expectations from an organizational standpoint ahead of time. Because again, that's also sometimes the project managers, they're really good at project managing, but they're not really good at conflict resolution or addressing delays or things like that. So probably from my end would have been better if I had, from a top-down standpoint, said, okay, we're really interested in working with you. Here's my expectations. Can you make this happen? As opposed to coming in during damage control, which I was not successful with. So
Yeah, we have this concept in software called scope creep, and I'm sure you're familiar with that
yes.
term. And so you had mentioned the process of signing off on the tool that you want is oftentimes the easy part, and the implementation is the more difficult part. And that comes because you're finally getting into the details. Like both sides in the pre-implementation process of like deciding and obviously like closing the sale from our perspective is it's really, you don't want to get into those details because it's seen as a cost at that point. And so you have these high level kind of line items, and you're like, yeah, the tool can do that, but when you get into the details, that's when this scope creep concept comes up, because things just start blowing up. And then all of a sudden you're a year and you're 2 years in, and nobody's happy. And so that controlling of that scope is oftentimes the make or break thing, and having that skill set. I think some of the things that you had mentioned there really are speaking to that, of like really trying to control the scope, and having the people with the expertise to do that involved is it can be challenging. It's not an easy skill, I would say.
Yeah, and I think going back to the sales process, and I don't really know how you do this, but let's face it, if you're in sales, which I'm not, for a reason, your job is to sell the product. It's to sell whatever software, whatever the product is. It's your job to sell it. And I think that it would be super helpful prior to implementation for the salespeople to really listen and hear, like, are there going to be some challenges here? Like, what are those? Are there some red flags or even, yellow flags that our implementation teams need to be aware of before they get started? Because oftentimes I feel like what I hear from our team is, well, they told us it could do this, but it can't, or it's going to be this incredible customization. And honestly, I'm sure that no one ever guaranteed that it was going to do whatever my staff felt it was going to do, but they, again, got caught up in all of the bells and whistles and how pretty this product looks. So it'd be, I think from a sales standpoint, it would be really helpful if there were, those conversations about the customer with the implementation team, so they better understand, like, here's what, they have a short attention span, and here's what's really important to them, and make sure that you can actually deliver on what people want. Because I would imagine that's not uncommon either. Once it gets to the implementation group, you're like, what did they sell?
Right. You make those implicit agreements.
Yes.
And people from either side of that handshake are seeing a different thing.
Right.
And nobody's intentionally making a mistake or selling anyone short. It's
No.
just it's hard to get into those details at that point, especially because your time is limited, our time is limited. We don't want to scare you away. You want to make an informed decision, but also you don't want to spend years deciding.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, one of the things, Laura, that I think this is something that really we came to understand better in the last couple of years, this particular thing about this disconnect between what you believe you're getting and what we believe we're selling you or our customers. And so we started having one of our last steps of our sales process being essentially a proposal review with the client. So you've decided to move ahead, and we're kind of maybe going through the contractual process, but we get someone from the services team along with our salespeople to walk through line by line of what we have, are supposed to be doing for you and what's included with the product. And with the full intention of us hoping that when we are done with that meeting, there's as clear as alignment as possible with the client on what they're getting. And if there isn't, then you can solve them there before you both have signed on the dotted line. And we're finding that's really having a really positive impact. And we don't do this for every solution we sell, but for our most complex ones, like our AMS solutions, we're doing that for sure now.
I think that's a really great idea, and I can honestly say I don't think that we've had any vendors that have approached it that way, or any suppliers that have approached it that way. And I think, again, I have to imagine it would make the process go a lot smoother. In that same vein, I feel like when I talk to my staff, I feel like oftentimes there's the additional disconnect is that they don't see it as a partnership of us working together with you or whoever the provider might be on a common solution. It's we versus them.
Yeah, which is not
that's
good.
that is not a recipe for success. And like if you're going to go into these situations, that's what I've tried to instill in our team, is that whoever you're working with is a partner. We want the same end result, and so you need to form relationships with these people. You're going to be working with them. Find something in common with them, so that you have something to talk to them about, and you both feel like you're engaged, invested in the process, as opposed to, well, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and we're not doing what it's a huge waste of energy, I think. And I think projects, let's face it, we want to do business with people that we like. And so
Right.
why not try to forge a relationship with, these implementations, can take year and a half, some probably longer than that. So you might as well try to find, some enjoyment in what you're doing.
In terms of, just kind of stepping back from the implementation, let's assume in a perfect world you are able to pick a company who is going to implement it correctly. But part of it is when you do the selection is also the software itself. Is there certain things that you look for in software these days that are really important, and maybe those are different things than you might have looked at 5 years ago? Are there things that are minimum table stakes for you? Any of those types of things that come to mind?
Well, it would be great if we could get a solution that did it all, one solution to do it all. But there probably are those solutions out there. But again, when you peel the onion back, it doesn't do this exactly the same, et cetera, et cetera. I think for us, we recognize we're going to be using a lot of different products. So right out of the box, it has to integrate. We have to be able to integrate everything without a whole bunch of band-aids. We want to know that the product is flexible and adaptable for the other products that we're using. I think we're a little bit more realistic in understanding that everything is not going to be the way it was before, because I think a lot of our team has historically, going into these searches, they're really just looking for the exact same thing. They're not open-minded enough to listen, to hear, like, this is what this can do for you. This is what this product can do to make your business better, faster, help you make better decisions. They really just want the newest version of what we already have, and then they get disappointed when it doesn't do it the way it was done before. And I personally think that's fine. That's why we're buying something new. We want to look at how to do things better, faster, more efficiently with better data. So I think understanding that products are going to be different, that they can integrate. I mean, those are probably the big things for us.
The running joke that we have in our business is that associations, nonprofits, they'll have their software for a long period of time, and during that time they might complain about it.
Right.
But the day or two before that system is getting unplugged, they suddenly fall deeply in love with it. And as you're saying, they want their new system to do all the things that the old one did, and yet the purpose of you buying a new system is because you want to do something a new way that's more efficient. But we certainly run into that all the time, and it's particularly someone who might have been on the staff who used that piece of software for a long time, and then it's hard for them to let go.
Yeah, I've always said to what I try to instill in these groups that are led by our IT team is that if we're going to look for a new product, let's talk about, like, what do we want. Let's forget about what XYZ doesn't do right now. Like, okay, we're going to invest in something new. What is it we want it to do? Let's forget about everything that this can't do. What is the purpose of looking for something new? And I think if and we don't regularly, if we approached everything that way, we would probably have better solutions that we could use longer, because we don't need to use everything that a solution has on day one. But I think if we thought more that way, we'd have solutions that could provide us enhancements over time as our needs change and grow, as opposed to, again, we're going to buy the same thing with a different name and go through this implementation, and then, as you said, all they keep referring to is, well, the old one did this and the old one did that. Well, then why did you change?
Right.
Exactly.
Let's extend the implementation on so we can customize it to do it like the old one did.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly. I hear that all the time. If it only did that, I'm like, well, why?
Yeah. I mean, the minimalist approach can oftentimes also come with benefits, right? Like, it would be nice if there was one product that did everything and was never broken, but like we also live in the real world, right? So it's like finding ways to do more with less means you're more portable and you have more options, and especially when things integrate correctly, like you were mentioning. And that's really at the core of what we're trying to do here at Momentum with the suite of products we have, is get them to work together in that way that gives you that experience and gives you those options.
Yeah, traditionally, as a company, our integrations from product to product have mostly been point to point, which is not the ideal way to do it. And so we're actually backing up, and we're working on building an integration layer that all of our products will talk to, so it's much easier for them to communicate with one another. But it will also then be easier for, if we want to plug in another third party, that suddenly it has the access and ability to connect with all the other products in our solution. So that's a big part of our strategy for this year, and it really dovetails nice with the strategy we have around AI, where we want to then use that work and then overlay an AI strategy that allows us to then go across all of our products rather than having kind of AI solutions that are point to point. And Jake, obviously, you know this stuff better than me, so maybe you can add a little more color to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, a big part of that is having like a universal language that all of these applications speak, right? There's a data model that addresses most things that associations want, and there's like a core there at least, and then that's shared amongst these various products, and there should be a way to kind of have that shared data for a particular customer's portfolio of however many of our products they have. They should be able to have very easily that data to be able to transition and be a source for each of those products. And then on top of that, right, you want to be able to to have models that reflect the actual use case that you have and become useful for you in your particular use case. So a lot of that has to do with standing up the correct infrastructure behind the scenes. It isn't something that necessarily you offer as a product, but it's more like the infrastructure that allows all of the products to be working together to that end for the customer. Luckily, we have a lot of interesting innovations happening all the time with generative AI, especially right now, but AI in general, and a lot of things that we can take advantage of to start to show some of those cool features. So we're excited to do some of that, especially throughout 2025, but beyond as well.
So Laura, as we kind of are dipping our toe into some of these more future things, what do you see as the kind of the future of associations and how that potentially dovetails with changes and advancements in technology?
Well, I think what we're going to see is that the traditional association model is there's probably a lot of people that argue it's very outdated. Membership is just not something that people want. And so what we're seeing is that I think what we're going to see is it's going to be more, people are probably not going to be members, but they're going to be more like customers, where they come to you for specific things that they want, as opposed to a package of services of which many you might not need. Like, for example, we have a lot of international members, and while we don't do a lot of advocacy work, we do some. And that's not of interest to them. So when they get their dues invoice and that's listed as one of these things, they say, well, I shouldn't really have to pay that much because we don't use that. So I think it'll be more, I think that it's going to evolve into more of a sort of a customer relationship where you come to us for certain things that you want. And maybe it's education, maybe it's you simply just want community and people that you can reach out to talk to about difficult cases or how to handle a type of case that you never had. There'll be connections, but the connection points I think will be very different. Very, very different. And in our case, I think I might have mentioned this, our organization's been around for about 40 years, and the premise for the original association was residents and fellows weren't being trained to do arthroscopy. So they didn't know how to do it. So they came to us strictly for education. Well, now most residents, certainly fellows, if they're if they're doing sports medicine, really most areas of orthopedics, they're learning how to do arthroscopy. So we are going to have to evolve to stay relevant because they don't need us. The domestic surgeons don't need us as much for that sort of introductory training that they did. So we're probably going to be more focused on difficult cases and supporting the training of new products and things. But I think it will look different, and it won't be here's your dues invoice and you get a journal and those types of things.
So perhaps a little more transactional in terms
Yes.
of and a la carte pricing and things like that.
Yes.
Build your own bundle, maybe.
Build your own bundle. I know, years ago, I think we sort of had that in general in associations, and then we went to this sort of, just one-stop shop. You pay one price and you get all these things, but that's the assumption that everybody wants all
Wants
those.
them, yeah.
Yeah, so we've actually even launched an education program that's kind of looks like a Netflix model, where you pay a certain amount of money every month and you have access to all kinds of on-demand educational tools, whether it's case videos or lectures, all kinds of different things. And it's been super successful. Yeah, I think it just speaks to people's needs are different. Everybody doesn't want the same thing. So you have to be agile enough to be able to sort of break away this package and make it available as to whatever it is you want. And as you said, that sort of a la carte method or model.
Makes sense.
Finding those opportunities to get the value to the customer, whether that's an actual membership or there's obviously a myriad of other things that you might be providing them.
Is international the biggest growth area for your organization? I know you're the North America organization, but you talked about other internationals.
Yeah, so we're very well known around the world. Our doctors are very well known, and so Again, it goes back to the training that's available. Now, I'm not speaking for the world in general because there's a lot of places where the training and the opportunities are very vast, but there's a lot of places in the world where they're not. So what we've tried to do over the last 5 to 7 years is really be more of an ambassador to our international colleagues and bring education where they are. So we've done courses in Dubai, in Qatar. We typically, throughout the year, will be in Latin America, China, Korea. We've got people in Egypt right now. So I think growth for us in these countries is probably where we're going to see, the growth is going to be greatest in those parts of the world, just because the opportunities that they have in many places are just so limited, and what they can do and how they can do it is so limited that we found a niche there, and it's been great. But we're only training very small numbers of people, so it's going to take a while to really sort of scale it, because again, it's expensive to take people to these places. But we're very well received, and the doctors love to learn from our surgeons and would come to the United States if they could. It's expensive, and they can't always do that.
What about e-learning? Have you had success with that? You probably heard that we acquired Blue Sky, and so obviously e-learning is something that is very near and dear to our heart. And it sounds like, now obviously you can't get a feeling for sticking a knife into somebody's body across e-learning, but
we do have a lot of we offer a lot of e-learning opportunities, because there are a lot of things that not even just younger surgeons, but typically early careerists need, and it's all technique based. So you can teach the steps for techniques, you can show via videos how these things are supposed to go, the case or the procedure is supposed to progress. So the answer to your question is there's a lot of, we take advantage of a lot of e-learning. It's just we like to see it as in companionship with these live opportunities. But the live opportunities are very, very expensive, because they just are. I mean, human tissue is very expensive. The towers, the equipment, the instruments, all of that stuff is very expensive. So e-learning is great. And we have a journal that's devoted, an online open access journal that's devoted just to surgical videos, where people can go in and learn. I hate to say this, but a lot of surgeons will, before they do a case, they will go out and watch one of the videos. They'll watch a video. I know you don't want to be the patient in the operating room hearing that, but they do that just to refresh, because again, every case is different. But I think we've seen a lot of value in e-learning. Not as much as I would have thought. We have a lot more users than we did, but I think there are just some people that are just resistant, or they purchase things and then don't use it for whatever reason.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that like each procedure is quite unique, and that potentially there's hundreds, if not thousands, of different types of procedures that they might be doing. And so the ability to refresh is probably, that's probably a massive benefit that you're offering. Speaking of benefits outside of just membership, right? So that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the international surgeons, where in the United States, a lot of surgeons will pick a specific joint. Like, I'm a knee surgeon, I'm a shoulder surgeon, etc. I think internationally, a lot of people are more generalists, and so they're not doing 100 knee procedures, a year, or 200, whatever it is. They're doing a few. So those online resources are really, really helpful to them to refresh, because maybe they haven't done this type of case in a month or two. I mean, who knows? But yeah. So I would like us to spend some more time expanding that portfolio of e-learning resources, because I think they have value, and we see it all the time that people like live events, but there's also some of the things that we don't do cadaveric training at our annual meeting. It's not cost effective to build a lab in a convention center or in a hotel, or to transport people to a lab. It just isn't. So there's a lot of opportunity for these e-learning experiences that we really need to try to build on.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, Laura. It's been a really illuminating conversation, and learning a lot from your experiences, and getting to hear about things that I don't get to hear about on a daily basis. So it's really, really quite interesting. But again, thank you. And it's been a fantastic conversation. And that has been another episode of the Beyond Membership podcast.